story in the paper about my being admitted to the Bar Association. But prior to that, the Forsyth County Bar had admitted Richard Irwin, who later became a federal district court judge, and he was black. So Greensboro was a little behind Winston-Salem in terms of making that change.
But the Middle District was ahead of many districts when you became a U.S. attorney.
Yes.
How many other African Americans were U.S. attorneys in the country at that point?
Probably 4 or 5 throughout the country, but none others in North Carolina. And when I was appointed, one of the big questions people were asking was, where was I going to eat when I moved about the district with the court? Because we met, among other places, in Wilkesboro, in Salisbury, in Durham, in Rockingham, and several other places. So again, here I was, standing in court representing the United States of America, and couldn't eat in the front door or at the seats, the counters, for some of the places where we were actually holding court. So that was it was unpleasant in that sense. But I knew what the situation was, and so I didn't let that bother me.
Once you became U.S. Attorney, how did it change the way others perceived you, both in the black community and in the white community?
I think to a lot of them, I was, I guess, a celebrity. Everywhere I went, I either was congratulated or people turned their head one way or the other. And I got a lot of invitations to speak at various places and to come and talk to people and things of that nature. So it was big news at that particular time.
How, in your opinion, were you selected by the president? I mean, what had you been involved in the past? Who were people that helped you in terms of obtaining that appointment? Yeah,
I think probably the single most important person was a gentleman named John Wheeler, who was president of Mechanics and Farmers Bank in Durham. He was a very active Democrat at that particular time, and he was very politically astute. And I think the Democratic administration in Washington at that time relied to a large extent on him for who would be a good person to handle the particular job. And I had done some work in association with Mr. Wheeler, and I think he respected my work. And based on that, I would think that that's why he recommended me for the position.
And you served in that position for 4 years?
No, I think it was less than 3 years. And then I got an offer to teach at North Carolina Central Law School. And I thought that would be a good opportunity to transition into the practice of law, because that's really what I wanted to do, was practice law. And at that time, I didn't think I had much of a chance of ever becoming the United States attorney. And so I had about, after 2.5 years, I was about ready to leave the U.S. Attorney's office anyway. And so they made this offer for me to come down and teach at North Carolina Central Law School, and I accepted and really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed teaching.
And how long were you on the faculty there?
2 years. I taught for 2 years. My second year, in the spring, I decided to run for the legislature. And one of my law student classes paid my filing fee, which was $17.50. So they gathered up the money and they said, we'll pay your filing fee. So they paid my filing fee, and I ran for the House of Representatives. And at that time, no black had been elected in 66 years to the North Carolina legislature. And guess what? I lost.
And those were at large elections.
Yes,
were
they were
not
at
any
large.
kind of districts back in those
no,
days.
no.
Everything was at large.
Yeah. In Guilford County, we were electing 6 at that time.
Right. And what year was that?
This would have been 1966, and I was 7th, and so I missed the cut.
But then you came back in 1968.
Then in 1968, I came back and ran again, and this time I won. And so to Raleigh I went. And actually, I was elected in '68. The legislature session really started in 1969. So it was in 1969 that, for the first time in the 20th century, when little children came to the legislature from all over the state, they could see a dark face among all of the people who were in the legislature. That was in the House. They still didn't have anybody in the Senate. But
until you came along a little later.
Well, no, actually we had some other blacks in the Senate before I came over there. Yes.
How long did you serve in the House?
I served 6 terms, which would have been 12 years in the House, and then I ran for the Senate and won, and served 1 term in the Senate.
And what was it like coming into the State House as a member in 1968 and being the only person of color?
Well, the first thing was it was something different, something new. It was something newsworthy, and so we get all that out of the way first. The second thing was a good feeling that here I am now a part of the people who make the laws for the state of North Carolina. And of course, as a lawyer, you've learned to respect the law, and wonder why laws are made one way or the other. Well, now here I am a part of that process, and so I guess I was probably the most studious person in the entire House of Representatives, because I didn't know any better at that time. I would read everything in the bill. I mean, they would introduce 25 bills, and I'd stay up late at night, reading everything in the bill and studying it and trying to decide what it meant and what it didn't mean and what I could do. And so
you were the only one doing that, I bet.
Well, there may have been a few other freshmen like me who were doing the same thing, But after being there a while, I learned that you have to sort of try to get the heart of it and let the committees, each committee, decide, first of all, about the details. And then you look at it very closely when it comes to the House floor for a vote, as it comes from the committee. But it took me a little while to really learn that. But it was a great experience. One of the things that I think is worthy of note is that I had a lot of respect from a lot of legislators throughout the state, especially in those areas where there were large numbers of blacks. And we had black people from all over the state who came to see me sort of as their representative. And almost invariably the position I would take, well, who is your representative? And some of them knew and some of them did not. And in each case, I would say, well, hold on just a minute, and I would call that particular legislator and tell him that I had someone from his district here, and I'd like to bring the person down to meet him, or in some cases to see them because they already knew them. And so I would take that person to his legislator, and then after introducing them or talking a little bit, I'd come on back and deal with whatever else I had to deal with. And I got to meet a lot of people from throughout the state like that, but hopefully I helped them to realize that you need to work with the people from your district where you have a vote and where you can influence whether they are elected or re-elected, as the case may be. And of course, the legislators already knew that, so I didn't have to explain that to them. But it was a very interesting process, and some very interesting years while I was there.